What's going on, guys? Welcome back to News to the Science, where we discuss comics, movies, games, and more. And tonight I want to share something that I found on the PlayStation blog, but I can't take the entire credit because it's all thanks to Khalid Brooks, aka Miles Morales of Earth 1218. He actually linked this article over here, and I found it on the PlayStation blog, all thanks to him. And pretty much the PlayStation blog covers the art of the Insomniac variant covers that we've been getting from the Beyond Amazing Spider-Man comics lately. And they already have 5 issues, and they're all available to order if you can find them. I actually managed to only find 3 out of the 5, which I'm going to go over in just a second. And I love these covers. In particular, my favorite one is this one, which is inspired by Tony Harris's Marvel Knights cover run. I really love this cover. It's my favorite one. Plus, I'm going to go over as to how they actually drew all of these covers. But before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and click on the bell notification so y'all don't miss anything. I post videos here on the channel on a daily, and I do live streams. Also, follow me on social media if you want to support me on other platforms, such as, of course, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitch, if you want to see other content there if you don't wish to support me on YouTube. But why wouldn't you? It's a Spider-Man channel. It's a Marvel channel. I love talking about Marvel stuff, especially Spider-Man. So here on the channel, we're covering a lot of Marvel Spider-Man 2 content for those of you who are pretty new, but if you go to my channel, you'll see that's pretty much the theme there. So anyways, we have here the PlayStation blog, and it's titled The Art of the Cover, Insomniac Artists on Drawing Spider-Man. So this is really cool. This is in fact indeed a collaboration between Insomniac Games and Marvel, and I think also PlayStation, since they already have it on their blog. And this is pretty much kicking off the marketing for Marvel Spider-Man 2. And it's really cool that they're doing it this way. So maybe some of you might have recalled that actually Insomniac Games did this for their very first Marvel Spider-Man run, where they actually released Marvel Spider-Man comics that featured the Insomniac game versions of that character, which is actually confirmed to take place in its own universe. Now, I don't remember the universe number off the top of my head. I know it's like universe 99 something something, but it is canon to the overall Spider-Verse. And in fact, this Spider-Man is going to be featured in the upcoming Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse film in June 2023. Now, I don't think that Spider-Man will have a huge or pivotal role in that movie. Maybe it won't even have a speaking line, but we do indeed know that he will be making an appearance in the film. In fact, in the actual official trailer that we got for the film recently, he appeared in about 3 frames or 4 frames. So he was actually featured prominently in that film. So I cannot wait to see that on the big screen when we go see that movie in theaters next year. So anyways, let's go ahead and talk about Spider-Man here. It's no secret that our team at Insomniac Games loves the character, so we wanted to show up for the Webhead's 60th anniversary in a cool way. Cue comics. We collaborated with Marvel to design 5 Beyond Amazing Spider-Man variant covers featuring art inspired by the Marvel Spider-Man game series, our studio's take on the character. See our cover gallery below. Each cover is accompanied by a blurb from the Insomniac artist showing info about their inspirations, insights, and love of Spider-Man. These issues have already begun rolling out in the US, with more releasing soon. Check with your local US retailers for availability. Marvel Spider-Man Remastered and Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales are available now on PlayStation 5 and PC. So we'll go with the first one here. I gotta actually stress this now. It was actually quite difficult to find the comics that I have on my desk right now. It's actually quite difficult to find any of the Spider-Man comics that you missed out on buying the day that they were released. So this one right here was released around November 23rd, I believe, and I totally missed out on getting it because I couldn't find it. They're very difficult to find. People already placed these comics on hold. Now, I urge you to get a comic book subscription at a local comic book shop near you. They do subscriptions where actually any comics that you put on hold comes in, it will actually be placed in your file, so that way you can get first dibs on it and nobody else can. And it's a shame because I was really disappointed that I couldn't find this issue. As a matter of fact, the issues that I do have before you guys right here, I actually got lucky in finding 2 out of these 3. So the 2 that I got lucky in finding were these right here. Marvel Spider-Man 3 Legacy 159 variant edition. They got to really do a better job with titling this thing, because this is just called Marvel 3 Legacy 159 Spider-Man variant edition Beyond Amazing. This is in fact I'm trying to get it clear so that way I don't get a lot of reflection on the plastic cover here on the bag. This is actually my favorite cover out of the entire variants that came out recently with the collaboration between Marvel and Insomniac Games. This one is inspired by Tony Harris's Marvel Knights cover of Spider-Man with Great Power. And I really love this. And you'd be surprised, actually, because, you know, a lot of comic book covers are drawn with, you know, using technology, of course, you know, through digital means. But you'd be surprised that a lot of these covers were achieved and designed by simply using Adobe Photoshop. I don't have the skills to draw. I can't really draw to save my life. I don't have the ability to draw, to, you know, at all. I try my best to draw, and when I do draw really well, I tend to trace more often. I mean, tracing is a form of, you know, drawing. It's a way of learning how to draw. But anyways, I'm getting off topic. But this is really neat. And also as well, I got lucky finding this one today, as a matter of fact. I actually tweeted this. So if you follow me on Twitter at @NewsToAstonish, you will see that I actually posted this. I got super lucky. This was at the back of the comic book store that I usually go to, at a bottom shelf. That's right. And this is just awesome. And you can tell that Insomniac Games wants to tease us with the black suit, because in the top corner features a black suited Spider-Man, which is really cool as well. I just got lucky. I was just like, oh, you know what? Let me take another look. Because I asked the shopkeeper like if they had any more of these covers, and they're like, no, we can't find any issues. So I went to the back looking for today's issues or latest releases, and this one came out today. And man, and behold, it was just staring at me. At the bottom shelf, it was by itself with other new releases that came out that day. I got super lucky. And of course, the Dark Web was already available. Dark Web #1 variant edition. This one was already available, so I got it was easy to find this one, actually, as a matter of fact. But the ones that are harder are the other two that I just showed, including this one. Now, if you want to order this one, you're gonna have to probably order it online. Probably Midtown Comics, I recommend, because it's available there. So they asked the artist what inspired this cover. The cover was inspired by a Spider-Man cover created by the amazing John Romita. And what tools did you use to create it? The cover was done using Photoshop. What's your personal history with Spider-Man? Spider-Man was definitely a part of my childhood growing up, watching the animated cartoon in the afternoon. The opening with its 3D buildings and iconic theme song stayed with me throughout my adulthood. I always thought how amazing it would be to be able to swing and around the city. And it would be many years later playing the Insomniac game that I would rediscover that feeling. What makes a great comic book cover? Its simplicity is what makes it great. I can imagine this cover sticking out in a comic book shop filled with hundreds, if not thousands, of comics all fighting for our attention with dynamic compositions. This cover would simply stand out just by contrast. And then now here's another one that I was just talking about, The Lost Hunt, Spider-Man. And they ask what inspired this cover. This cover is a tribute to Web of Spider-Man #1 by Art Charles issue, so that is the main inspiration. That being said, I grew up as a Spider-Man fan in the 90s and 2000s and wanted to bring some of that artistic flavor that inspired me heavily growing up. I have a big love for detailed artwork and strong composition that tells a story in different layers. I can actually relate to that, because I do have a love for big detailed artwork. Comic books with huge amounts of details that are on the covers, really, that stick out to me, are the ones that really grab my attention, and I really just get drawn to those types of comics. I really love that. You probably already know, if you've been on my channel long enough, that I talk about Todd McFarlane's art. The amount of detail that he puts into his comics, especially in the characters, with all the lining and shading and drawings, and the shadows and everything. It's incredible what that man can do, and I think his artwork is pretty much unparalleled at this point. I say that lightly because I always kind of flip-flop. I always admire different artists and their ability to draw comic books characters. But Todd McFarlane is just one of those that are in the top 5. Jim Lee is also one of those people that his art really catches my attention as well. Especially the way he draws DC comics like Batman and Superman. I love the way he draws them. But anyways, they asked what tools did you use to create this. I primarily use Photoshop and some 3D for setting up base and perspective in the scene. What's your personal history with Spider-Man? I was convinced I was a Spider-Man as a kid and ruined a bookshelf at home after getting ideas from reading some new comics. All jokes aside, I have always been a huge comic book fan, and Spider-Man has always been on the top of that list. Some of the earliest drawings are of Spider-Man and his villains. I remember looking at the art, thinking that one day maybe I can draw like that. And what makes a great comic book cover? I think that there can be many different good concepts around what makes a good cover. Sometimes I love very simplistic covers, stylized or old school. My favorite idea behind a cover is something that generates ideas of what could happen in the issue without telling too much. I'm a big fan of mystery and seeing something that eludes or foreshadows what is to come. And that's exactly true. I mean, I love things that are kind of mysterious. You ever look at a good book or a comic book and it doesn't say much, there's no context, you're like wondering, I wonder what's going to transpire in this particular comic, because the cover is drawing my attention. So I really want to know what happens, what events do transpire in this issue. And like, you can actually formulate like kind of a story just by looking at this cover. I mean, I already have it on the screen, so I don't need to show you, but just by looking at this cover, you can kind of formulate a story. The way I see it, I see conflict within someone's self. I see someone experiencing problems with duality when it comes to this cover. That's what I see, and that's my opinion. Like, that's how I'm judging this cover. You know, I'm judging a book based on its cover. So when I read the story, it's actually something entirely different, because again, this is a variant. That doesn't mean what you see on the cover doesn't exactly reflect on what's to be told in the comic. So this is really cool. So what inspired this cover that you picked? Now we're talking about the one I just showed you. What really inspired me to pick this cover was how much the original art covered, created by Tony Harris, stood out from many of the options I was able to choose from to make this variant cover. This idea and composition were so clear, simple, and powerful, but most of all, the cover art captured me at an emotional level. Realizing how complex this piece was, I wanted to challenge myself to do a variant version of it and somehow keep the original feel of it. What tools did you use to create it? To create this illustration, I've used ZBrush to sculpt and pose Spider-Man's suit and Peter Parker. I've used Blender to set up the lights and rendered using cycles. I took this opportunity to express a more painterly look for this cover, so I intentionally made a low resolution render so I could not be lost in high render details. Finally, I spent many hours over painting the render using Adobe Photoshop to get the results that I was aiming for. What's your personal history with Spider-Man? Out of the two superheroes that I was exposed to at a very young age, one of them was Spider-Man. I was not old enough to understand the text in the balloons, but the strips were so powerful to me, and I was amazed how sequential they were. I was able to understand the story without reading them. Even at a young age, without much life experience, I felt I was able to relate to the everyday life of Peter Parker at an emotional level. The story embedded with art kept me interested in many years, up to my late teens. I pretty much had a subscription to Spider-Man comics that was dropped off into my mailbox monthly until my 20s. What makes a great comic book cover? For me personally, what makes a book cover great is the emotion it reflects. If the cover art can capture the audience at an emotional level, I would consider it successful. And that's true. I think I was just covering that recently before I read that paragraph. A good book cover tends to draw a lot of people's attention. It's just like the same thing with movie covers. You know, you look at a Blu-ray cover or an art box of, like, you know, a movie. It's a real shame because a lot of movies don't have really cool looking covers anymore these days. Not like they did in the 80s where there were actually oil paintings or drawings. But nowadays it's just like a little bit bland, and it's like, this doesn't look good. I love that comic books can still capture that feeling, you know, where a cover looks really appealing and impressive enough to capture a potential reader. So I love that feeling, and I love the look. That's why I like comics so much. I mean, a huge reason is because of the covers that really draw my attention. Now, this is also another one that I was looking for. I can't find it at all. I look online, very hard to find. This is the Daryl Mandrake cover. And they asked what inspired this cover. This cover is a remake of the classic cover Here Lies, but with the twist of featuring the advanced suit. What tools did you use to create it? Primarily, it was done with all Photoshop using basic digital painting tools. The gravestone was modeled in Blender and composition into the image. That is so cool how they can combine like different, you know, software editing, you know, painting software, and then put it into one. That is so cool that they did that. That is really cool. I didn't even know you can do this in Blender at all, actually. What's your personal history with Spider-Man? Spider-Man is one of my favorite superheroes. When I was a kid, I watched the classic cartoon and bought a lot of Spidey comics. I loved his wisecracking personality and the wide range of imaginative villains he faced. When I got older, I could relate to Peter's struggles with relationships and finances. What makes a great comic book cover? A few things. It has to be a good first impression, so the reader will be motivated to pick it up and read it. Therefore, the image should be arresting and dramatic, tempting you with all the excitement inside, and it needs to be clear and simple enough to communicate this quickly. It must stand out from what's next to it on the shelf, so something about it has to be unique. This could be the colors, composition, or storytelling. I guess you can say finding a hook for the image. It's not an exact science, but I think if you keep these things in mind, you are at least on the path to success. And lastly, this cover right here, it's actually one of my other favorites. This is the Dark Web Marvel 1 Variant Edition Beyond Amazing. And this one was from Bobby Hernandez. What inspired this cover? The cover is homage to the Amazing Spider-Man issue 100, created by the legendary John Romita Sr. It's inspired by the designs we created at Insomniac Games for our Marvel Spider-Man and Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales games. What tools did you use? Spider-Man was posed out in 3D to get his anatomy down and help me understand the posing. This also helped me understand where the suit folded and what details would be visible. I then used this to draw him in Photoshop along with the rest of the layout. I finished it up in Photoshop by painting and rendering Spider-Man and then drawing the additional characters with white line work on a black background to mimic the approach from the original cover. What's your personal history with Spider-Man? Spider-Man has been a part of my life ever since I was a kid from playing the action figures. Collecting and reading the Spider-Man comics has had a huge impact on my art career. Seeing the various artists interpret the villains as well as Spidey himself, and telling those iconic stories through comic book panels and covers. Today, I am very grateful to be currently working at Insomniac Games and being able to help and add to the story and legacy of Spider-Man through the games we create. And what makes a great comic book cover, they ask? To me, a great comic book cover is like a great movie poster. It should pull you in and your interest in. I should show elements of the story without giving the story away. It suggests the tone and emotion of the story within the pages you are about to read. You mix that with the awesome composition and design, and I feel like that truly lends itself to great cover. And I couldn't have put it better myself. This is so awesome that PlayStation and Insomniac decided to share this on their blog, especially PlayStation. They didn't have to do this, but this was incredible. And now we have more context and more of a background story as to what these covers came to be. You know, I've always wanted to know how these were done, and to know that this was done using basic everyday, software that a lot of regular people like us use, like Photoshop and Blender and stuff like that. Because I know quite a few people actually utilize that kind of software. Just to know that you can do that in that kind of software should inspire a lot of folks to actually go ahead and go out there and make their own comic books. So that's really cool. I think I could probably make my own comic book. I mean, I have something called Procreate on my iPad Pro, and I firmly believe I can create a very decent looking comic book cover using that software. So in fact, this blog has actually inspired me enough to actually go ahead and try to create my own comic book. But anyways, what are your thoughts about the collaboration of Insomniac Games and Marvel coming out with these covers? Have you found any of these comic books? If so, how many did you collect? Did you manage to find them all, or did you only find like a few of them out of the 5? You let me know down below. Comment down below with your favorites. And as always, guys, thank you all so much for watching. That's all I got for you today. I know it was probably pretty much a long one today, but I wanted to talk about this because I was really excited, and I hope you guys were excited too. And as always, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click on the bell notifications so you all don't miss anything. As always, I will see you all in the next comic panel.
Will one of you finally give me what I desire?
PlayStation